Sand Cave Incident. Floyd Collins, a 37-year-old cave explorer, entered Sand Cave near Cave City, Kentucky, in search of a new tourist attraction. He had previously discovered Crystal Cave, but wanted a site closer to the main road to attract more visitors. That morning, he descended into the cave alone, carrying only a kerosene lantern for light. The cave was cold, damp, and full of narrow crawl spaces that required him to squeeze forward on his stomach. He crawled 120 feet from the entrance through icy, muddy passages, where each move was deliberate and slow. As he moved forward, he pushed the lantern ahead of him, feeling the walls tighten around his body. Eventually, he reached a chamber 55 feet underground and started to turn around. As he shifted his weight, a 27-pound rock above him dislodged and fell onto his left ankle. The rock pinned him in place inside a shaft less than 15 inches high and barely wider than his body. He could not move forward or backward and was now completely trapped underground alone. He screamed for help, but his voice couldn't travel through the winding, narrow passage. Hours passed before anyone realized he was missing. The next morning, his family began searching and discovered his coat near the cave entrance. A teenager named Jewel Estes entered the cave, found Floyd, and returned to tell the others. Rescue efforts began immediately with Floyd's brother Homer among the first to reach him. Homer crawled into the tunnel and stayed with Floyd for hours, feeding him water and talking to keep him awake. He made multiple attempts to dig him free, but the space was too tight and the rock too heavy. More people arrived each day and word spread quickly through the nearby towns. Soon, reporters, photographers, and spectators flooded the area. They built tents, food stands, and even charged for access to view the rescue site. One reporter, Skeets Miller from the Louisville Courier-Journal, became the key witness to Floyd's condition. He was small enough to reach him and crawled in multiple times to interview Floyd directly. His reports made national headlines, and Floyd became a symbol of courage and endurance. Meanwhile, conditions in the cave grew worse. Cold air, dripping water, and falling rocks made the shaft increasingly dangerous. On February 4th, the tunnel collapsed again, cutting off access to Floyd completely. No one could reach him, and his voice was no longer heard. Rescuers decided to dig a vertical shaft from above to reach him from another direction. The new shaft was slow, dangerous, and required heavy labor by dozens of workers day and night. By the time they reached Floyd on February 16th, it had been 17 days since he first became trapped. He was found dead, still lying in the same position with his leg pinned under the rock. The cause of death was exposure, thirst, and eventual starvation. Floyd's body was left in the cave temporarily, as the shaft was too unstable to safely remove him. 2 months later, a team managed to retrieve his remains and he was buried near Crystal Cave. His tombstone describes him as the greatest cave explorer ever known. The story of his death became one of the first live-covered media events in American history. The entrance to Sand Cave was later sealed. Mossdale Cave Incident. Mossdale Caverns, located in North Yorkshire, England, is one of the most dangerous cave systems in the UK. It stretches for miles underground, with extremely narrow passages, fast-rising water, and very few escape routes. Only experienced cavers ever go inside, and even then only when the weather is right. On June 24, 1967, a group of 10 people from the Leeds University Caving Club decided to explore it. The weather had been dry, but rain was forecast later in the day. 6 of them went inside, led by 20-year-old Michael Ryan, along with 5 other experienced cavers, all under the age of 30. The remaining 4 stayed outside as surface support. The group entered around 1 p.m. They passed through a section called the Stream Passage, then moved deeper through a series of tight squeezes, crawls, and low-roofed chambers. This part of the cave is known to flood rapidly. Even a small amount of rainfall can raise the water level in minutes, blocking any possible exit. While they were deep inside, a sudden rainstorm hit the moors above. The hills around Mossdale have very shallow soil, meaning rain doesn't soak in. It runs straight into the cave. By 6 p.m., water was pouring into the entrance and rushing down the passageways. The 4 surface team members realized something was wrong. They couldn't hear the group inside anymore, and the stream was now flowing fast into the cave. One of them ran to the nearest farm to call for help. By 8 p.m., local rescue teams were on site, but the water was too high to allow entry. They had to wait for it to recede, which took more than 12 hours. By the next morning, conditions had improved. A rescue diver went inside. With great difficulty, he reached a section called the Mud Hall. There was no sign of the group. Further in a narrow chamber called Far Sump, he found backpacks and personal items. He then came to a choke point full of debris and realized this was likely where the group had been trapped. Later that day, more divers were brought in to help clear the passage. It took hours. Eventually, they located the bodies of 2 cavers, wedged in a submerged tunnel. Behind them, the rest of the group was found lying face down in the water. Each was in a position suggesting they had tried to crawl out against the current, but had been overwhelmed. The narrow tunnels acted like funnels, concentrating the floodwater. The group likely drowned within minutes of the cave flooding. Despite having helmets, helmets, lights, and ropes, none of it could help against the force of rising water and the lack of space to move. Over the next few days, rescue efforts continued. But the conditions were so dangerous that officials made a decision. Instead of removing them, they would seal the cave forever with concrete. The bodies of all 6 cavers remain entombed inside Mossdale caverns to this day, and a memorial stone was placed at the entrance. Nutty Putty Cave. John Edward Jones, a 26-year-old medical student, entered Nutty Putty Cave in Utah with his brother Josh and 9 other family members and friends. The cave was located near Salt Lake City and had reopened only recently after a previous closure caused by multiple rescue incidents. John and Josh had explored caves together since childhood, but this was John's first time inside Nutty Putty Cave specifically. The cave was considered beginner-friendly in the first sections, including the maze and the big slide, which were wide and accessible. Other areas, like the birth canal, were extremely narrow and meant only for experienced cavers. The group entered the cave using a special permit just before evening on November 24, 2009. Most of the group stayed in the beginner areas, but John and Josh decided to explore the harder tunnels deeper inside. They had heard about the birth canal, which was one of the tightest passages in the cave and led to a small room where a person could turn around. The tunnel narrowed quickly and sloped steeply downward. John went in head first and kept going, hoping it would open into the turnaround chamber. Instead, the passage led to a dead end and became just 10 inches high and 18 inches wide. John was now upside down, with his head pointed downward and his legs above him. His body was trapped in a vertical shaft, and gravity pulled him deeper into the hole. He couldn't go forward or backward and was completely stuck. He yelled for help, and Josh tried to pull him out by the legs, but there was no movement. Josh couldn't get enough leverage, and after becoming exhausted, he exited the cave to call for help. John remained stuck alone in the rock with his chest pressed against the wall, making it hard to breathe. Rescuers began arriving 3 hours later, and a female rescuer was the first to reach him. She had a rope tied to her ankle and managed to place another rope around John's legs to attempt an extraction. Pulling him out with manpower failed, and the rescue team decided to install a pulley system. The pulley system had been used successfully 5 years earlier to rescue another caver stuck in a similar area, but bringing the gear down the cave took time since the tunnel was so narrow. Only one rescuer at a time could work in the shaft. The team worked through the night to get the pulley system into place. By now, John had been upside down for over 12 hours. His circulation began to fail, and blood pooled in his head. His chest had little space to expand, and his breathing became limited. He started hallucinating and drifted in and out of lucidity. A communication device was lowered so he could speak with his wife. He told her he would be okay, and she encouraged him to stay strong. Around 4 a.m., the pulley system was ready, and rescuer Ryan Schertz entered the tunnel to begin lifting. As they pulled John upward, he screamed in agony as his legs turned purple and lost circulation. John rose high enough that Ryan could see his face and gave him water through a straw. But his legs hit the ceiling of the tunnel, preventing further movement. They considered breaking his legs to free him, but time was running out. Then the main bolt anchoring the pulley system to the wall failed. The entire rig recoiled violently and struck Ryan in the face. He lost consciousness briefly and suffered injuries to his lips, tongue, and jaw. After waking up, he exited the cave immediately. John had slipped deeper into the shaft again. Rescuers rebuilt the pulley over the next hour. They tried pulling him out again, but John was no longer responding. A medic entered the shaft to check for signs of life. At 11:56 p.m. on November 25, 2009, John Edward Jones was declared dead. He had been trapped upside down for 27 hours. Removing his body was considered too dangerous due to the narrow passage and risk of further injury. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed with concrete shortly after. A memorial plaque was placed at the entrance in his honor.